Yep, Waniwa sister.
Well,
My name's Jody Broun, so I'm the new Chief Executive Officer for what's called the National Indigenous Australians Agency. So it covers the whole of Australia, and there's offices, for this agency right across Australia. And my minister is Minister Ken Wyatt, which some people might know, the minister. And so I work very closely with the minister, but my job is to make sure the department or the agency runs really well. And deliver on things like the Closing the Gap and the local and regional voice, which the government have signed off on, and we're going to get that started. And lots of other things that the agency does right across Australia.
Yeah, I had the privilege of meeting Ken White, and he was here in the studio. I had an interview with him was it last year or the year before? Anyway, so you're the boss of Minister Ken White's National Indigenous Australian Agency for the next 5 years.
That's right.
How do you feel about fitting into that role?
Oh, look, I suppose if people know what I've been doing over the last sort of 20 years, I suppose. So I did leave WA and went to work in New South Wales, and I ran Aboriginal affairs there for 7 years. And I've also done some other things like work. I was running Red Cross for New South Wales and ACT for a while, about 4.5 years. And then more recently, I've been running Aboriginal housing in New South Wales, as well as an Aboriginal strategy across the whole Department of Planning, Industry and Environment. So done lots of other things, and I think this is a new challenge, but it's got it's really exciting, the sort of work that the agency does. And so I'm looking forward to 5 years of working in this agency.
Excellent. And and what do you hope to achieve while you're in that role for the next 5 years?
Yeah, it's a good question. As you know, the agency has got a couple of big deliverables. One around closing the gap, and so we work with all of the peak Aboriginal organisations, Indigenous organisations right across Australia. Working with government and the peaks to come up with plans and deliver on those plans. So closing the gap is one of our big ones. And then the government's also agreed to set up local and regional voices across Australia. So that's another big part of our work. And I would hope that over the next 5 years, not only do those things get implemented, but we see the voice of Aboriginal people and those positive outcomes really, being delivered. Because it's not just up to our agency, obviously, it's every government department and every peak organisation working together and making sure the voice of Aboriginal people is heard in the design and the delivery of those programs.
I think the key thing here is working together, yes. All right, we've heard you're going to be the most senior Indigenous person in the Australian Public Service. What does this mean?
So I suppose, it's pretty exciting being an Injibunni person as the most senior Aboriginal person, Indigenous person in government. So, across government, it is a fairly senior role. I get to work across all other government agencies and secretaries, so it means I have to have a lot of meetings and influence a lot of different departments. Also, working with other states and territories as well. So at the moment, I've had some meetings last week in Perth, and I've got meetings this afternoon or tomorrow, I think, in Broun. Then then I've got to go to Adelaide, and then I'll go to Brisbane, and then finally I'll get back to Canberra. But it is meetings with the senior people in those states and territories as well. So the heads of the premiers' departments and those sorts of things. And it's actually holding them accountable, like we're accountable as an agency, but also holding other governments accountable and other heads of departments accountable as well. And my job is really about a big piece about influencing them, but also making sure that they're delivering on actions and working in partnership with Indigenous organisations and peaks.
Awesome. All right, so you're here in Western Australia now for... What are you up to? Sorry.
So last week I got into Perth and I had some meetings there with various stakeholders as well as heads of government agencies. And then, got, as I said, some meetings up in Broun tomorrow and then in Headland. and then over to Adelaide and then up to Brisbane. But a big part of my job, there's almost 1,300 staff in this agency. So going to all my regional offices and meeting people like yourselves, meeting other stakeholders, and really what I like to do is actually not only be out on country and actually see what people are doing, and really, there's some fantastic work going on, as we know, but also hearing direct from people on the ground as well.
And it's good to, because you'll be taking this senior role on, it's good to see that you are putting yourself out there, even in this time of being careful not to, with COVID and all that stuff, Yeah.
The work, even with COVID, obviously, you still have to the work still has to go on. We've got lots of work to do, as you can appreciate.
Yes.